All right, welcome everybody. I think we're going to hold on for just a little bit to make sure everybody can get a chance to hop on, and then we'll get started. I think we'll wait just a couple more minutes. It seems like people are still kind of flooding in, so we'll wait a couple more minutes and then we'll dive right in. Looks like we're waiting for just a couple more people, and so hopefully here in just a few short minutes we'll be able to get started. All right, sorry for the long delay, but I think we're going to wait about 5 more minutes till we get everybody situated and on board for today's call. We're really excited to bring you this content around field services, and right before this, we will, or just after this 5 minutes or so, we will dive into the content and get on with today's message. All right, everyone. I think we're situated and ready to take on for putting out this content for you all. And with that, I just wanted to just hope that everybody has had and been able to find their kind of new normal these past few months. And if not, we're glad that you joined us and take away some valuable information, as well as some tools to get you on track to finish out 2020 strong and really give yourself a jump start into 2021. With that, I'll introduce myself. I'm Darren Kenobi, and I work on the marketing and strategy team here at PivIT. It has been an exciting process putting this content together for you today, as well as be able to truly get on board with this. And I think it'll connect well and resonate with many of you. Also on today's call, we have Joe Zender, our VP of Services here at PivIT. He is one of the team members who also helped create Extend, and he is one of the PivIT team members that I can always rely on to bring an idea through to fruition, whether it's customer facing or on any sort of content. Thanks for being on, Joe.
You bet. Thanks for having me here, Dan.
With that, we will just give a quick note before we get fully ramped up. As you're all well familiar with Zoom now in today's world, as a reminder, you have your audio settings there on the bottom taskbar on the left-hand side. Then throughout any of the webinar today, feel free to use the chat to introduce yourself, where you're from, things you do, just general chatter. And then next to it, you'll see the Q&A button. There we ask if you have any questions, feel free to post them there, and one of our team members will answer it there in the chat, reach out to you, or we'll try to answer the question towards the end in our time for Q&A. So let's jump right in. To give you a look at what we'll cover today, we'll take a short bit to look back on 2020 and kind of thread that story throughout for a perspective that we may have had in January, though I don't want to send too many shivers down your spine. We won't spend too much time there. Then we'll start to share how to expect and plan for the unexpected, what we've seen from our clients, and share the research from their successes. And lastly, we'll look into some industry specifics and how information and tools we will cover today can directly relate to you. And we'll wrap up with some questions that you may have. And truly, one of our goals for today is that you walk away with a better understanding of how field services can work for you, with you, and alongside you or your team. And a hint to that, what that exactly looks like, is that there are various ways that field services can prove their value, and each company and team that we've worked with has had a unique experience. Rarely are field services a copy and paste from one problem and solution to another. And so with that, it's definitely been quite a year. And to gauge for what that mindset may look like and gearing towards, we asked, what do you wish you had more of as you've had a chance to react to the ever-changing challenges the year has faced? And we'll let you take a couple minutes to click that vote. All right, let's go back to November 2019. If you can take your mindset back there. Let's see here. Two things from that planning meeting that came out of it. Two things have big circles around them: the data center consolidation that we have there in April, and a new office installment taking place 6 months later in October. And your team has normal operations to consider, for example, normal updates taking place, minor troubleshooting, making sure the network continues to stay up and running, answer any questions that may come from your business or sales teams, review maintenance strategies, etc. And as team lead, what needs to be done? Well, first things first, you want to set your team up for success. And this includes setting deadlines and expectations and deliverables for engineers, design leads, procurement leads, really anybody who will be working alongside you on these projects. And you'll want to start beginning the outlining of the consolidation, whether that's assessing the current state, planning for what that looks like, designing the new consolidation, the new data center, building it, and then finally operating. Lastly, you're going to be drafting and sending your first messages to some building architects to get blueprints of the new office building. And you're definitely looking for a management approach to help you do your job best with as few interfaces as possible. For example, here at PivIT, our third-party maintenance offering often pairs with field engineering services. Within your normal operation, breakdowns and outages occur on the regular. And when you find a replacement part, you can send it to the site with a designated field engineer to help install that new equipment, as well as to take the replacement part off-site. But we'll get into that and what that example looks like just here after a bit. Let's move into January. You've assessed and planned for the consolidation. You've outlined decommissioning when that will take place come March 1. Your team is firing on all cylinders, procuring equipment, gearing up for the configurations, and continue to handling that day-to-day operations. But then COVID hits. As uncertainty hits, and you don't really know if you'll be able to complete the consolidation or even have a new office at all, your schedule looks a little bit more like this. Any and all planning gets put on hold. Everyone stops in their tracks, not knowing if they can move forward, backward, anywhere in their work lives, let alone lives outside of work. Heck, we don't even know if we can leave our house to get a sandwich. What we do know is that any certainty you had for the year is gone. What plans you thought you had moving forward are no more, and everybody is in a complete readjustment. And more importantly, let's take a look at your team. In January, if you're an enterprise-sized company, let's say 170,000 employees, your IT team could be around 2,400 people with a $400 million budget. If you're a small business with 400 employees and around 50 people on your team, your budget may look around 18 million. You're excited for going into 2020. You thought you really finally had your budget underway and to complete some of these bigger projects that could really help project your company forward. But with this year's, with COVID-19, your numbers may look a little bit more like this. Your company could downsize to 100,000 employees in that enterprise size with your budget and team cut in half. When we look at the small to medium-sized businesses, your IT team and budget could be greater than that 50% hit. Your IT team has dwindled down to 20 people with an $8 million budget, and that just doesn't leave a whole lot of room to complete some of these bigger projects. So you may have seen these numbers, and I'm not sharing any profoundly new news, but what this shows, though, is that gaps were created and holes were made in companies, systems, too far. Holes were made in companies, systems, networks, teams, and uncertainty left you with no knowledge of how to fill the gaps needed to complete and keep on track for the day-to-day, let alone those big projects. And many people have adapted and adjusted. Kudos to them, and we hope that that's your story. But some are just now getting that strategy built to repair those holes and fill these gaps, while some are left with no strategy at all. And so as we've come to know this time with COVID, as new normal and operations are becoming stabilized to a degree, when you start looking at your 2021 calendar, given all that has changed, how do you feel about your projects moving forward? Where do you feel like you fit on adjusting to the new normal and getting back on track? All right, as you guys finish up taking that poll, enough thinking about what has happened in 2020 and where you may currently be at. I want to take this opportunity to share with you how we've seen companies begin to fill gaps in their system operations, networks, and teams. Here you see a representation of what 2020 has left has left you with for preparing for 2021. You see some gaps in there, some holes, and what fills the gaps currently is the uncertainty that we've been discussing. Visible holes around completing daily operations and pushing off those big projects. When PivIT first created Extend, it was built to fill these gaps and plug holes with field services. And 2020 shows just how large these gaps and holes can be for a company. Extend exists to act as an extension of your existing IT teams and to allow your team to leverage the global reach that you need in 2020. Our leading service, Smart Hands, gives you access to a team of engineers who come alongside your management to complete any project, from management of assets to data destruction, configurations to wireless site surveys, and much more that we'll get into here in just a second. As we look forward to 2021, we've seen companies essentially copy some of those big projects that they couldn't complete in their 2020 calendar into their 2021 calendar. Are you doing the similar? And as promised, we wanted to share with you some of the research from these companies winning with Extend in field services. So to go back to the calendar, we have the consolidation on the docket yet. With budgets and teams cut in half, how will you get this project as well as the new office installment across the finish line? The holes aren't going anywhere and the deadlines are staying the same. And we had a financial services provider with this same problem. They needed to consolidate and relocate 13 micro data centers to a single location. Under the project goal, you'll see an inventory of all assets, decommissioning of a third of the assets, and the remaining to be recommissioned, and logistical support and management was all required. I would like to invite Joe back in to this conversation. And we recently had an Australian company that was in the process of being acquired, and their situation looks similar to the one that I just described here with this financial sector. Could you go into what that looked like for them, shipping internationally and some of the remote staging environments? Oh, Joe, I'm not sure if the mic is on.
There we go.
There we go.
Keep myself unmuted. Obviously, there's been a lot of travel restrictions for much of this year, which is threw a lot of curveballs for most organizations. Whereas, in the past, you might have been able to send your team on site. You might be able to allocate and grab additional resources and just fly them around the country to whatever location you need. For most organizations, much of the year, these organizations either don't have an appetite for it or it's logistically not possible to fly out of country or fly into certain regions. So one company in particular, so they are a software company and they acquired a company in Sydney, Australia, who had a completely different setup in their office environment there. So the company here in the US, they had standardized across, Meraki for access points, HP for their compute, as well as Palo Alto for their security, as well as Cisco on the routing and traditional switching. So because they wanted to get them standardized so that they have the seamless infrastructure globally, where they leveraged our team was using Extend and our staging capabilities, where they shipped all of the equipment to us. We procured some of it and they shipped some of it to us. We loaded everything into our staging facility here, where through all the technology that we have built into it, we're able to give their infrastructure team here in the US remote access and to do all the pre-configuration ahead of time. So all of their access points and switches and security, firewalls, all those things, they were able to get remote access to. So not from their house or not from the corporate office where they didn't have access to any longer, but they could do it all at our facility at the time in the windows that we had set up for them. Once that was completed, our logistics team basically took white glove treatment, covered everything in terms of all logistics to get all of the equipment shipped down to that Sydney office, to fly right through customs. Any customs clearance issues or whatnot, our team handled for them, so they pretty much didn't have to do anything at that point. And we had a team on site ready for the installation. So when the equipment arrived, because we had a window of a weekend to do the project, so the equipment all arrived in country, cleared customs towards the end of a week. And our team, once the equipment arrived, they were on site, went in over the weekend, swapped out all the access points, did routing, switching, firewalls, got everything taken out, all the new equipment put in, and they were completed by Sunday afternoon, and they were back on a flight back to the US Sunday evening. So all of that was important for them because they couldn't fly to Australia. They couldn't, coordinating all the different, Palo Alto firewalls and all these things coming into a site, the corporate headquarters, where they couldn't enter any longer. We were able to kind of help solve that problem for them, do it very seamlessly and very simply for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I remember kind of hear more about that and how just the two big things within that asset management and the engineer just really help provide some certainty for them. And so that with that, we'll move into kind of our next example here. But to bring back in this calendar, it's now August. How are we going to onboard this new office that we mentioned back in the beginning, with half the IT team now that we just got done consolidating the 13 data centers, or moving and consolidating that team down in Australia. You're now turning your focus on installing the new office. You surely don't have the IT team there, maybe a business development guy, but he won't do much for setting up the Wi-Fi. He may just complain about it. We don't know. But with the office opening up in November, you do need surveys done, not even wireless site surveys. You just need to know what the site looks like. Where things are going to go. Where's the server room? Where's the command center? Some of these major questions are being sorted out. An extended engineer can actually come in and really help start running some of that cabling, placing APs, and doing some of those wireless surveys as needed. But by the time those questions do have answers, the team is ready for direction on how to best set up that server room and command center. This looked very similar to a global communications corporation who reached out to us to handle their wireless surveys and to handle some of these complexities that they've been seeing. The biggest issue that they ran into with this pandemic this year is traveling throughout the United States. Their locations were in various states, and Joe, how did Extend really best set them up for success, being multi-state, many different offices placed throughout the US, and how did our team really step in to help them out?
Yeah, great. So, wireless for Extend at least, is definitely one of our most popular, fast-growing offerings that we have, and that's primarily because the dynamic of new office buildings for most organizations has changed dramatically in the last few years. Most everyone has, a little more open environment there, where wireless becomes a much bigger factor. Instead of having every desk, fixed with, all the cabling, everything fixed at one particular station. People like the ability at a lot of new offices to kind of freely roam around the office, whether to conference rooms or different casual stations. So wireless for new offices is very big. One of the complexities of that is when you have multiple states that you are doing these upgrades for, or if you're moving into new buildings and you have to have, you can't have any drop zones. You can't have any areas where you're seeing wireless coverage dropping any longer, because now all the employees feel it. So when you have a standard and expectation of what you're hoping for, having a team a dedicated team that knows exactly what this company wants, how the environment is, what aspects are critical, what are not, and being able to we standardize that across all of the different facilities as they're opening new sites, as they're upgrading existing sites. We know exactly what they're after. And so we can send that team on site. That particular contract, we have a dedicated PMP or project manager assigned to them. So as we get to know each different environment, working hand in hand with them. And so, as well as being able to, obviously, travel restrictions, those are a lot more complex. So as those travel restrictions are still in place, and they probably will be for the foreseeable future, that having all those things streamlined for them allows the infrastructure team at the headquarters to kind of just, standardize across all locations. So that was, like I said, that's probably one of our more popular offerings through Extend right now.
Love it. That's awesome. Yeah, and the tie there with the wireless site surveys really helped, again, bring in some of that certainty that we needed in 2020. And as we continue to look at our calendar this year, we can really see the turnaround starting to happen. There were a lot of question marks. There was a lot of unknowns, but we're starting to see some consistency happen. Projects are moving forward, and the IT department's finally starting to see some wins. And let's finish out the year with, we're going to dive into the healthcare sector, and Extend Smart Hands really stepped in to complete a full infrastructure audit of a hospital's network here just a few years ago, and with some connecting clinics. With the team cuts, and we made in simple and straightforward hiring of a level 1 engineer team to travel throughout each of these facilities, taking inventory of the full network. We were also able to work with team leads to create plans for the upcoming year. Network designers and architects were working at a high level to plan for the infrastructure upgrades and et cetera. But this year, what we saw, we had a hospital in the Portland area that really needed help with some temporary locations, clinics. They were just expanding because of the high need. A lot of offsite locations were popping up, but they still all needed to connect back in. Joe, could you dive in just a little bit to see what this kind of looked like and how Extend and our team were able to help with this with the healthcare provider, knowing how important it is to keep this sector up and running?
Sure. I mean, no surprise, as most organizations, most of the year has changed for just about everyone, as you were kind of pointing out earlier, with the projects you had planned to what they actually turned out to be and the available resources that you had. When something went as quickly as COVID went this year, particularly in the healthcare sector, I would even say more than any other sector, if you had to create temporary facilities very quickly, most healthcare systems, you have your team is who they are, and if you have to double capacity because of new sites and acquiring new buildings and new sites, and you have to turn on the infrastructure there, which is required for obviously all the things that they do, you need help. And so our ability to kind of quickly turn around very quickly, whether it's equipment. So I know in this particular case, they needed, I think it was close to 1,000 ports on the network they needed turned on in a day. So fortunately, they're in Portland, leveraging everything that we have in our inventory and a quick turnaround, and then having our Extend team there, we were able to kind of get it out there. So I can't remember the exact number of switches. I think it was around 200 to 250 switches to get out there in the field installed, and then having our team help them in terms of getting everything configured so that these temporary facilities could be turned on literally in 2 days. And a lot of times, supply got crazy with, you have a global supply chain for everything in IT getting shut down and severely impacted very quickly in the springtime. Availability of equipment got harder and harder for phones, for webcams, for all these sorts of things. So I would say the enthusiasm by PivIT and our creativity in solving problems outside of the box, and then backfilling it when you need feet on the street, all those things allow you to, or most organizations, to go to market much faster. So you don't have the same lead times, and you don't have the same people restrictions that everyone is bumping into and bumped into.
That's awesome. Yeah. And as we move through that, again, just in our engineering support and Smart Hands, we're able to really focus in. And yeah, as you said, the planned projects versus reality were very different as we move through. These three industries are by no means the only industries that we've seen affected, and this truly has been a global pandemic and incorporates all industries, and Extend is here to really help provide that certainty to get projects across the finish line. And Joe, as we look at kind of the 5 certainties that we dove into with Extend, what we can provide for teams, is there anything else that you would like to hit on just now as we place these in front of them?
No, I mean, I would probably say most everyone on this call, if you have 5 things here, everyone's, might reprioritize these 5 a little differently depending on the objectives you have for the rest of 2020 and looking out in 2021. But we have a solid story, and we have great references on all 5 of these particular issues that, like I said, it's going to be different than what you may have experienced or may have used different providers for in the past, which is that's our differentiator. We want to be different, and seeing outside of the box and coming with creative solutions for every one of these 5 certainties. That's where I think we're going to shine. We'd love the chance to shine there.
That's great. All right, we'll move into some question and some Q&A from the audience. And one of the first questions here from Jeremy from Virginia is, he says, one of these certainties is ITAD. What programs are in place to help offset some of these ITAD costs?
So with ITAD, there's a lot of logistics is, in my mind, very important. So with ITAD in particular, the most common area that we will see ITAD is when you're shutting down facilities. As every organization to some degree and is moving to a hybrid cloud scenario, there's a lot of infrastructure that's coming available. So if you're in 10 data centers, 10 micro data centers, you're going to move it down to 2 or 3 or something like that. The logistics associated with moving that down, which are costs, can be considerable. So the benefit that we have in the ITAD space, we have the ability for any level of data destruction that an organization might require, and it's different across all the different sectors. So we can provide those certificates. We also be interested in buying back any of that infrastructure. So if there's any market value that's left in the equipment that you're no longer going to be repurposing, we can buy back that hardware and either apply that as a credit towards the overall costs of the consolidation, or trade it out. So you can we could decommission 100 servers and you could upgrade your firewalls to Fortinet or Palo Alto or something. So we can essentially fund other projects via ITAD, which normally it's just money comes right off. Normally it's an expense, but if we can create some working capital as part of that ITAD process, all of a sudden you'll find funding for projects that may not have been available before.
That's great. Cal from Arizona here says, I was intrigued with the remote staging and configurations. Who do you have on staff that can help me either dive into some configurations or really just help set up my network when I do purchase infrastructure?
So through Extend, we have, in terms of, for example, in the land of Cisco, so we have CCIEs of every different variety immediately available for you guys. So if you're going to do a complete network redesign and you need a CCIE routing and switching engineer, we have those immediately available to kind of help you guys as a customer, help you roll out to make sure you're rolling out the best technology that your budget has. A lot of times our creativity is we're going to recommend some solutions that may not hit your radar, because the OEM is going to push the latest and greatest. We're going to have a blend of all the above, and we're going to put different OEMs into the mix so that you don't have to be an all same OEM across every footprint. That if you want the best of breed to cover network, compute, storage, all the above, we can make those recommendations, and we have everyone on the bench kind of ready to help you guys navigate through those waters.
Perfect. All right. It's a common story, and each company has their calendars each year. And as you have the duty to fulfill the tasks at hand, we truly strive to be an extension of your existing IT teams. And with a deep history in this industry, we understand the challenges that you and your team face day to day, and we offer these solutions discussed today to combat those very challenges. Whether you're migrating to the cloud, as Joe mentioned, growing or shrinking offices, site surveys, asset management, look to Extend for the knowledge and experience to support you. Joe, thanks for being on today, and thank you all for joining. Have a great rest of your week, and please do not hesitate to reach out with any questions.
Thanks, Darren.